Now let's get on to XPath. Okay, XPath is nothing but XML path. Like we discussed on the other class, there are two types of XPaths. One is absolute and the other one is relative. Alright, XPath is something like the path of a web element on the HTML DOM structure for that particular browser. Alright, so now what is this absolute relative? Absolute is right from the beginning to the end of the address is nothing but the absolute. A web element has an address. If you are giving right away from the beginning to the end of the address, then that we call as absolute. Now relative, which begins with double slash, this is not away right from the beginning to the ending. It begins somewhere in the middle of the address. So double slash indicates that somewhere. Okay, so the basic syntax of a relative XPath is somewhere in the address of the web element we have a tag, and for that tag there is an attribute and whose value is so and so. So this becomes the basic syntax for relative XPath. So most of the times this is what we're going to use. Okay, however there are different combinations in this, but a relative XPath would look something like this. Now absolute means instead of this double slash we give the complete path of that particular address. So let's go and see an example. Now for this example I'm going to use yahoo.com again. Right, okay, let me open yahoo.com, and my interest is select origin. Okay, so let's go and put this into the program now. So I already have a program ready over here which says where is my Chrome driver, and then it will open yahoo.com. Alright, so I need to declare my by object by select origin equals to by dot, so XPath is what I'm going to use this time. Okay, right, so how do I get the XPath for a particular web element? Is Firebug will go and give that to you. How is that? Click on this, now select origin. If you observe here, now this is nothing but the XPath of that select origin web element. So straight away copy these, bring it and paste it here. Right, if you observe this XPath provided by Firebug, okay, dot and double slash will indicate that somewhere on the web page, and star indicates some tag. Okay, try to relate with this. I said tag, right? So instead of tag, if you put star, that means some tag has an attribute of value. Okay, but instead of star, let's put as some tag. So what I do here is, alright, okay, observe this. This is the code to declare the select origin web element. Now input is the tag over here. So for us to make it understand a bit more, I'm replacing the star with the input. Now input, and so now begins the square brackets. Now in square brackets, if you observe at id, this is the attribute of this input tag, and that id equals to value be flight origin city. Let's go and see this. Now in input tag there is an id and whose value is be flight origin. Exactly, that's what given by as Firebug to us. Okay, so now I'll ask my driver to find the web element whose address is select origin. Now after finding it, what should I do? Send some text into it. Okay, what text? Let's fix it to HO. What's wrong? Let's fix it to HOID. Okay, I'm saving it and let me run this. Right, open up. Okay, see, it went ahead and have the text HTML. So we used XPath. The next thing is I have a situation. If we observe the same browser website, ID is so and so. What about the class required field act input? Okay, and this is another attribute, so, and name is another attribute. So we have multiple attributes. Okay, sometimes the value of the attributes would not be constant every time. That is, first time you launch the browser, the value would be, let's say, ID equals to B flight origin city. Next time it could be B flight origin town, a third time B flight origin village. So every time the value would be changing, so it's a dynamic. For that 3 iterations, 3 times, we have something in common, that is B flight origin. So what I do is I'll pick that common text, and using that text I have another way to catch, that's called using contains init. That is, I want to say browser, that is driver, go and pick that web element whose tag is input and ID contains a text B flight origin. So I'm not going to say that. What is the next? So I'm going to say only till here. Are you able to get it? So browser, there is a web element whose tag is input and which has an attribute called ID, and that ID contains the text of B flight origin. Okay, so how do I put that into the program? Now I'll say remove everything, XPath. Now I'm gonna use, first is my, somewhere there is a tag called input. Okay, now square brackets, in the square brackets I'm going to use something called contains. Now in contains, what is the attribute? ID is the attribute, and what is the text that you want it to look for? I'm sorry, double quotes, single quotes. Perfect. So this is nothing but XPath using contains expression. Okay, let's go and run this. Right, we got what we're looking for. So now next is observe the select origin web element. We have an ID of B flight origin city, and the class is required field account input. Alright, and let me go and check what is the class name for select destination. Required field account input. So I have 2 web elements with same class name. So I wanted to give it a try. What exactly will happen if I ask our web element to be picked based on its class name, which is required field account input? Let's try that. Alright, so input at class equals, what is the value? Is it the same? No, I didn't copy that. Let me copy the required. Okay, done. Mix gearing it. So now I have 2 web elements with this class name, at least 2. Okay, so which one does it pick? First one, second one, or something else? Or will that fail? Alright, so it picked first one. So the logic here is, no matter how many elements with same address that you gave would have, it would always pick the first one. Alright, no matter how many classes of required field account input do you have, no matter how many web elements with this class do you have, always WebDriver, as soon as it got the first one, it would pick that and then it would go ahead with that web element. Okay, so just to come out of this, there is another concept called AND OR. So using this AND or OR, you could ask, I have a web element whose class equals to required field account input and ID equals to be flight arrival city. Now it makes it to be unique. This is the catch over here. AND or OR is nothing but using multiple attributes in a single expression to identify a web element uniquely. Okay, so I'm not going to write any program for that. I just wanted to make you aware of there is something called AND or OR. Okay, so next thing that we switch on to here is CSS. CSS is cascading style sheets, absolutely something like the way we work with XPath. Let's go and write a program for that. Alright, okay, input class. Now I'll revert this back to at ID equals to, what was the ID? Be flight arrival city. Okay, I made it because I would like to show the difference between XPath and CSS. Now I'm gonna say the same thing, but this time it's not XPath, CSS. Okay, I do want this. Okay, if you look, whatever that I gave inside XPath and CSS selector is absolutely the same, but I will have to make few changes. That is, in CSS all the IDs are identified with hash and all the classes are identified with the dot. Okay, let me go and put that this way, so I don't have to give this double slash in CSS. Straight away CSS, there is a tag called input whose ID is be flight arrival city. That's it. So input ID and value of that particular ID. So if I run this, what's going to happen? So it will have to select the arrival city web element, that is destination, and then enter text HYD into it. Alright, so perfect, done. CSS should be much faster than times when none of them is working, we'll switch on to CSS, but most of the times we'll work with XPath and ID and name. Okay, and link text altogether is a different concept. You will not go with the address of the web element, but just the link text available on the browser. Okay, so I think this is the way we work with locators. We are done with ID, name, link text, partial. Class is not something that we use very often, so for that reason I did not show you how to write a program for that. XPath, yes, we use it, and there are a couple of things to be observed with XPath. That is, we have two absolute and relative, and there are different expressions, contains and OR. Okay, and OR is used to give multiple attributes in single expression. Now contains is if your attribute contains a set of common text, based on that you want to pick a web element, you're going to use this. Okay. CSS is how do we work with CSS? Absolutely something like XPath, but ID is identified with hash, class with dot, and we do have all the concepts of XPath with CSS, that is how to contain and or all that, but I'm not digging into that detail, and you can dig it on your own. Lots of materials are available online. Yeah, that's all.